Hi everyone, today I'm going to share with you my experience with this MSI X870 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. Before I begin, I'd like to thank MSI to have provided this board, inclusive of the two colorful mouse pad as you can see here, and also to Cobell to have done the arrangement on the delivery. On top of which, thanks to Alvin to have purchased off from Cobell on this board and allowing me to share with you guys. These are the accessories that come in the box. You'll be provided with a leaflet of stickers where you have the MSI Dragon Crest, and these round stickers are meant for your CMOS battery and the Lucky Dragon sticker. And over at this side, these are basically label stickers for your fan cables, your RGB devices, and for your SATA. Next will be this quick installation guide where it shows you the very basic on how to install the processor and such. And the most important part is in fact this QR code over here. There are a total of 4, whereby the first one when you scan, right, is to register your motherboard to have the warranty. Next will be the MSI reward program. Now for this MSI reward program, as and when you purchase a product from MSI, right, when you register it, you will accumulate certain points and you can make use of those points to redeem rewards. Next will be the MSI membership, whereby you will get more information about MSI latest products, and at the meantime there are events and such, so you might want to check out with this app itself. Last but not least is the shout out of MSI, where you have this leaflet. I'm not going to go through this, but just based on this, now what this does is that you can write reviews about your motherboard and how you felt and experienced when you're using it. At the meantime, you might have suggestions and such for MSI to improve on. You can make use of this app. Next, you have this European Union regulatory notice, which again, I wouldn't know what this is for, but if you're in Europe country, right, this might aid you, so read through. Now, as for the accessories, starting off with this is a breakout, or should I say an extension, whereby it's meant for your front I/O power switch, your reset switch, your hard disk LEDs and such. So this is meant for you to connect to the motherboard and it extend out. So when you have your case connectors, right, at the front I/O, you can just connect this. Easy access. A pair of SATA cable where one you have right angle, this is right angle, this is straight. Total of 3 M.2 additional clips, which I'll show you the mechanism later. So this is how it looks like. It can be a replacement or the actual use, which I will show you later. And in order to fasten this and to remove all this clip, right, you'll be provided with this tool here. And this screw here, in fact, I have no idea what this is for, but it's just provided. Next will be this USB thumb drive. Now this USB thumb drive, as I mentioned on the Carbon X870E motherboard, right, this is very important, whereby in the event if you are new to PC building and you only have this set to build, you don't have a spare laptop and such, this is where the driver comes in handy. It does contain the RJ45, which is your Ethernet socket, and your Wi-Fi. So when you install Windows itself, right, there will be a session whereby it will prompt to ask you, do you have Wi-Fi connection? Which you do not have the driver, so you will need this to install to it in order to go through the process of installation of Windows 11 or Windows 10. Next will be a proprietary cable, whereby MSI have introduced this. This is meant for you to plug to the proprietary socket, which I'll show you later, and you will break out to 3 cables. One which is your front I/O, next will be your ARGB, and next will be additional 4-pin PWM fan header, or should I say socket. And last but not least, this very unique antenna, which you might find that, oh, this is quite flimsy, but less the worries, this is magnetic. So you can just magnet this at the top of your case, which is metal, or at the side of the case, which is metal. And the way they have designed the plug, right, it used to be screwed into the rear Wi-Fi socket, but this you just need to plug and play. This is how the physical motherboard looks like. Starting off with the measurements, from here to here is at 305mm. From here to here is at 243mm. As for the side VRM and the rear VRM heatsink, the thickness, starting off with the side, this is at 33mm, and at the rear, this is at 43mm. Now when I first touched the motherboard itself, it's so sturdy and it feels like military grade kind of motherboard, whereby all the VRM heatsink, the M.2 heatsink, inclusive of the chipset heatsink, these are all aluminium. And the design of it, right, some of you might like it, some of you might not like it, based on the fact that these are highlighted in green, or should I say light green, see? And I'm going to introduce to you what you can do with this design with a very special case. Not to keep you in suspense, this is the case that I'm talking about, coming from Geometrix Future, known as the Model 5. And this is the special green edition, which I do have it with me, thanks to Geometrix, just to show you the outlook and design of this case. See, it's very unique, which I will be conducting a content on this case itself at a later stage. This is an ATX form factor motherboard which has an 8-layer of PCB to provide rigidity and stability. On top of which, as you can see, the copper line traces to all the socket and lanes is at 2 ounce. The power phase of this motherboard is at 14 plus 2 plus 1 with 80M choke. At the center, this is the 1718 socket that support AMD processor of 9000 series, 8000 series and 7000 series. At the bottom section, you have 4 DIMM slots that only cater for DDR5 with a max capacity of 256 GB, and it runs in dual channel. And the max overclock EXP profile, which is at 8400. There are a total of 3 PCI-E slots, which is 1, 2, 3, where this is controlled by the processor and these 2 are controlled by the chipset. And do take note, this is a X870 chipset where you only have single, not dual. And speaking about the lanes, right, at the top slot at Gen 5, which is X16, and this is at Gen 3, which is X1, and the last one is at Gen 4 at X4. There's one thing very neat about the PCIe slot, especially the first slot, whereby you plug your graphic card in. So in the past, when you plug the card in, right, and in order to remove the card, you will have to press the lever at the side, which sometimes is out of reach and it can be a hassle. So MSI have actually designed this locking mechanism or release mechanism, whereby take a look at the mechanism over here. This is at lock position. If I have to press it down, this is unlocked and you will stay unlocked. So you can remove off the graphic card, and if you want to lock it back, you just press this button. Now, having to say this, right, why this mechanism is good, whereby some of the motherboards, right, they do have the same function, but instead of staying unlocked, which MSI have done, you will need to hold on to the button. And with the other hand, right, only one hand, right, imagine that your card is so heavy, you need to unplug it out. And accidents do happen by hitting the rear, or maybe, you know, accidentally slip the card and to break the pins and such, as in like your PCIe bottom section. So instead, MSI have done a very clever idea. So this is locked. So when you press unlock, right, it will stay unlocked, freeing both hands. You can grab the graphic card, pull it out, and with firm grip, rather than having the single hand, right, to handle the heavy graphic card. So this is one beauty which I really appreciate what MSI have done. There are a total of 4 M.2 slots with 1, 2, 3 and 4. With the first 2 controlled by the processor, this is Gen 5 and is backward compatible. The third and fourth is controlled by your chipset, which is Gen 4. Now, to remove the armor shield of the top slot and the bottom slot, there are toolers. Press at the back, leave it up, and pull from the back, and this is off. Same goes to the bottom. Press from the back, leave it up, and pull from the back. And to place this armor shield back is pretty straightforward. As you can see, there are slots over here. Follow the nudge, or should I say the ball on the slot. Align it properly and press the back. It's straightforward. Same goes to the top section. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. And to remove off the center section, now you will need to remove these 4 screws. But when you're removing the screws, right, please do not do it this way, as in like take one screw and unscrew all the way, because if you unscrew all the way, right, this whole plate will warp. As in like it's not warp, but it will lift up, giving more pressure to the rest of the screws, right. The rest of the screws might just bend, and you will be having a difficulty to remove off the plate or even to put it back. So do it this way, as in like alternately, unscrew this one round, unscrew this one round, do the same with the rest, and continue the motion as in like alternate till you feel that the whole plate is released off from the catching area. So you can just take it off and you expose the slot areas. Now do take note that the top slot is equipped with top and bottom with thermal pads. Else for the rest, right, is only at the top. Now as for the locking mechanism, only the top section is with this clip over here. So let me just zoom in. So when you place your M.2, just press it down and this will clip on. And if you want to release, just press it down and this will be removed. And if you have a longer M.2, right, there is a lever over here. So you might need to remove off this clip. And speaking of which, right, if you damage this clip, you can use the spares which I showed you during the accessories session, right. You can unscrew this and to replace this clip. Okay, I'm talking about this clip. And at the meantime, right, this clip, those spare clips that I show you, on the lower section of the slot, if you have a shorter M.2, okay, this is pretty long. If you have it this way, you can also make use of this and to screw it on. Now, besides this, I'd like to talk about the lane sharing on this board, and I find it easier to explain to you on the M.2s. Now, if you are using a 9000 or 7000 processor, as mentioned to you, the generation and the lanes and such, they are what I've mentioned. Now, in the event, if you want to populate the first slot and the second slot, generation 5 M.2, please take note on this. The second slot will share lane with the rear USB 4 Type-C port, which is here will be running on speed X2, and the second slot will be running on X2. You can also configure in UEFI if you do not need to use the USB, accidentally plug the USB 4 Type-C connector, right. You want this to be in full, right, you can configure in your UEFI. So this will be X4. But when you're configuring to X4, take note, the 2 port, which is USB 4, will be disabled. Next, if you are to connect the third PCI-E slot with a card, your third M.2 slot will share lane with your third PCI-E slot. Meaning say, instead of running X4, right, this will be X2, this will be X2. Again, you can configure in your UEFI if you want the third slot to run an X4, right, this will be disabled. Or vice versa, if you configure in UEFI to have the third slot run an X4, this will be disabled. So take note on this. Now, another thing I'd like to highlight is whereby if you are using a AMD 8000 processor, take note on this. The PCIe slot on the first slot will not run on Gen 5, it will run on Gen 4. Same goes to your M.2, which is Gen 4 and Gen 4 and not Gen 5. Additional info which I like to emphasize, when you're mounting back the armor shield, the top and the bottom section is pretty straightforward. But please be very careful when you mount the center. Just like how you dismount it, when you mount it, right, make sure that you screw it down alternately. Because if you do screw it one totally in, right, the rest you will have a problem to align them to the screw thread at the bottom and causing misthreading or the wear and tear on the screw thread itself. So do not fully screw on one screws and do the rest. Make sure you do it alternately so that it will sit nicely. You will not damage the screws from bending and to warn off the thread. Another thing I like to talk, which I've forgotten, which is the VRM Heatsink. Now, from the previous generation to this, right, MSI have increased the fins over here, as in like thicker, and with this thinner fins sorting out, so this will dissipate a lot of heat. And followed by the rear, which you can see over here, right, this thing is hollow, where you have a flat or thin surface at the top. Okay, so imagine that the heat from the whole block is dissipating through this plate. This will give off more heat. It's just like the concept of having a cup and a plate. If you put hot water in a cup, right, which if this is not hollow, right, the heat dissipation is not that great. If you place it on a plate whereby you throw in hot water, right, it will dissipate heat faster. It's just like this thin piece of aluminium. It just reacts as a plate. So heat will dissipate off through here pretty fast. And this will tell me that the heat dissipation, right, from the VRM itself will be very good. This board is equipped with a ALC 4080 audio codec which support high definition 7.1 channel. And if you want to trigger the 7.1 channel, which is surround sound, make sure you make use of the SPIF out port over here. And if you are using normal speakers version 2.1, just plug to this line out socket. So take note on this. As for connection, starting off with the left, this is meant for your front I/O microphone and headphone jack, followed by a 12 volt RGB connector, a 3-pin 5 volt ARGB connector, which is commonly used for your ARGB strips and ARGB fans and such. Right at the top over here, the 2 pins is meant for your chassis intrusion, which we do not use. Right at the bottom, where it says JDP1, I have no idea what this is for, so I'll just skip. Next, you have a 4-pin PWM fan header, a 8-pin PCIe socket, whereby it draws powers from your power supply, which connects to here, and this power will supply to your front Type-C connector, which enables the fast charge on mobile devices and such. And it has a max voltage of 27 watt. Next, you have this pins over here. I have no idea what this pins is, so I'll just skip. Next, you'll be provided with 2 2.0 USB header, followed by 2 4-pin PWM fan header, and 2 3-pin 5 volt ARGB connector. And right at the top over here, this is the clear CMOS pin. So when you short it, hold it for 5 seconds and let go, it will clear off all the settings that you've done in your BIOS or UEFI. At the top, in the event if you are lazy to clear CMOS and do reconfigure the settings itself, right, and your system is not able to boot up, what you can do is just to short this, known as the safe boot, whereby you'll bypass all the configuration on your BIOS and you do it as default, and you can boot it into UEFI and you can configure and correct your mistakes. Now at this side over here, this is meant for your internal speakers if you have in your chassis, and followed by here, this is the front I/O, whereby you connect your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED, and your hard disk LED. Moving to the front, you have 2 3.0 connector, which is for your front I/O USB Type A socket. You have total of 4 SATA connection point. Now do take note, if you were to populate all the SATA with your SSDs and such, right, it will not interfere with the lanes of your M.2s and such. Meaning to say, you can operate all in full, having 4 M.2s and 4 SATA. Next will be a Type-C connector, which I already mentioned to you. This is for your front Type-C I/O. Now, next you have a proprietary connector, whereby earlier on in the accessories I've shown you this cable, where this proprietary connector, right, will connect to this socket over here. Then it will speed up to this. So instead of using the front I/O over here, right, you can make use of this. This does have the front I/O connector, where you can connect your power switch, the power LED, the reset switch, and the hard disk LED through here. And also it does speed up to provide you with a 3-pin 5V ARGB connector and a 4-pin PWM fan header. Next you have the 24-pin socket, where it pull power from your power supply and to be plugged over here to supply the power to all the socket and such, but not the processor. Alright. Next you have a digital debug LED, which is very useful because you can look into details on the manual itself. By the way, the manual you can search on the website. Okay, it's all listed there, because this does not come with an instruction manual physically as a booklet, so you have to go to the website and check out what the debug code meant. So these are into details, and in general they do supply you with the debug LEDs. Then you say a very brief prompt, as in like, are you able to boot? Is the graphic card on? Is your CPU having problem, or your memory having problem? Things like that. So these are the simplified indication of the errors. Next, you'll be provided with 2 additional 4-pin PWM fan header, and for this I wouldn't know what this is for. I'll just skip. Now at the top you have 3 more additional 4-pin PWM fan header, whereby this is for your CPU, as in like CPU fan or your radiator fans, and this in white is meant for your radiator pump, and this is the system fan, which you can plug to your top or maybe the front case fans. Now at the rear you have 2 8-pin EBS connector, and again I always mention that if you are not doing extreme overclocking, right, you can just plug 1. You don't have to plug 2. It's more than sufficient to supply power to your processor, which is of high end and such, not an issue. And these are of solid pins. What do we mean by solid pins? Whereby you connect the EPS to it, right, it's firmly grabbed so that it doesn't wobble and such. This is the rear I/O, where you have the top button over here, the clear CMOS button, and at the bottom this is the BIOS flashback button, followed by a HDMI socket, where this socket makes use of the integrated graphic on the processor itself, and this is version 2.1. You have total of 9 USB type A port, as you can see over here. These 2 are of version 3.2 generation 2 that has a transfer rate of 10 gig, which is in red. And for the blue ones, which you have 3, this is again version 3.2 but generation 1 that has a transfer rate of 5 gig. And followed by all these black ones, these are all version 2.0. And right at the bottom you have 3 Type-C port, whereby these 2 are USB 4 and has a transfer rate of 40 gig. And it also acts as a display port, whereby version 1.4, so it's able to project out to 4K 60Hz if you have any portable screen, or should I say monitor, that has a Type-C connection. And both of this is making use of the integrated graphic on your processor. And as for this, right, this is just a data port, which is version 3.2 and generation 2, which has a transfer rate of 10 gig. Right at the top, this is a RJ45 socket, where you connect your Ethernet, or should I say the Cat6 or Cat5 cables to this, and it has a transfer rate of 5 gig. These are the Wi-Fi socket, which is meant for Wi-Fi 7. And as earlier on mentioned to you, right, that the antenna that comes with it, you have these 2, which you don't have to screw in. You can just plug it in. It's pretty straightforward. See? Same goes to the bottom. And if you want to remove, right, just pull it out. It's simple as that. Next, you have the audio connection, which I mentioned earlier. If you want to trigger the 7.1 surround sound, right, make use of the SPDIF out. And if you're using a normal speaker, just make use of the line out. And of course, you're provided with a microphone jack. This section is of additional info, as some of you have asked me this question: how do I do a BIOS flashback with the review motherboard that I've done? So on this motherboard itself, as you can see, there's a BIOS flashback button. And take note on this USB port where it's highlighted with a white line. This is where you should be plugging in your latest BIOS on the thumb drive to this port before you can make use of this button over here. So first thing you need to do, right, is to prepare your BIOS version in a thumb drive. You will need to proceed to your motherboard website, then go to support, and under drivers and download, right, click on firmware and BIOS. So this is the latest BIOS, but make sure you read, do you require it or not? So for example, let's say you're preparing the 9000X3D series, and not only this, sometimes the BIOS itself, right, will tell you what are the fixes and such. So make sure you read this. So once you have fixed to whatever BIOS, latest BIOS that you wanted, right, you click on download. So when you download it, okay, you will have this folder. So what you will do is extract this folder out. Alright. Then followed by the instructions on the instruction manual where it says update BIOS with flash BIOS button. First thing to do, as I mentioned, download the BIOS from the website. Rename the BIOS file to msi.rom. So on the folder itself, right, say this is the BIOS, not this, alright, this is the text. Okay, let me just enlarge this so that you can see. So not this, this is just telling you the log of the BIOS itself. What you need to do is to rename this. I would advise, look at the instruction manual, copy this. Okay, copy the text. Then go to the file, which is the actual BIOS. Rename this whole thing as this. Then transfer this to your USB thumb drive. Once you've done that, right, now do take note that for the USB thumb drive, right, make sure that it's at FAT32 before you transfer the file. Once you've done this, right, on the motherboard itself, connect the CPU. This means that you need to connect your 8-pin EPS. Okay, let me just bring you back to here. Okay, this is the EPS connector. Make sure you plug this and the 24-pin. You don't have to plug your processor nor your RAMs and such, just with the 8-pin EPS power and the 24-pin connector over here. Once you've done, right, plug the USB drive, which you have transferred, whatever you have renamed over here, to your USB thumb drive, to the USB socket, which is this, the one that is highlighted in white. So once it's plugged in, right, next thing you will need to do, power up your PSU. Do not turn on the machine, just to power up, to ensure that there are power going through to the 8-pin and the 24-pin. Once that's done, on the rear, just press this button which says flash BIOS button. Press on it, hold 3 seconds, and look for indication on the motherboard itself, I believe on the front, where there is LED flashing. Once you see the flash, right, let go of this button over here and keep an eye on the flash. And as the time goes by, right, it will start to flash and blink at a faster rate till it comes to a time whereby it stops blinking. That means to say your latest BIOS is being flashed to your motherboard. Just a demo, this is what happens when you do a BIOS flashback, and you can observe that underneath the rear VRM heatsink, right, there is this red flashlight. It's blinking and blinking. Wait till it stops, then it's done. Now this section is going to be very lengthy. If you choose to skip, you can. There are timestamps where you can skip. Now this is the easy mode of the UEFI, as you can see over here, and these are all the functions by one click. And on my right, it tells you what kind of processor you're using, the RAMs that you're using, the storage, which I have not populated any on the M.2 slot and the SATA slot, so there's nothing present. And at the lower right, where you have fan profile, this is where you see all the RPMs of your fans which you have plugged on the motherboard. At the moment, there's only an air cooler. That's why the only RPM that's showing is my air cooler fan. Now, all this function over here, starting from here, if you were to want to play your games at a default setting and you just want to boost the clock frequency and to achieve higher FPS, you can just do a one click by clicking this on. See, this will boost. This will tell the system to boost your processor and such. You do not want it, you have to come back to here and to off it. Next will be NPU AI boost. Before I did the BIOS flashback, right, this was not grey out. But after I done that, right, this was grey out. I believe that this processor is able to make use of the AI boost. It's just that MSI decided to do something on the BIOS, so they have grey out this function first till they fine tune and do wait for the latest BIOS, which will enable this function. Next will be the memory, where you can set the expo profile. See, it's just one click. And over here, it's just telling you the information about the motherboard, the BIOS version, and which build it is, and the system temperature. And of course, you can see the core temperature over here. Now, over at this side, right, the easy configuration part. Okay, let me see what. Okay. For the easy configuration part, right, where you have precision boost overdrive, which most of you are familiar of when you do undervolting, there are preset profiles over here which you can use. So it's as according to what you want to select. Next will be the memory try it. Now do take note that you can try your memory, right, or should I say the DDR5 RAM kit to have tighter timing and faster bus speed, but this is only on trial. So if you have set this as Expo 1, right, and you set this as memory try, as in like higher bus speed and tighter timing, right, when you save this profile and reboot, it will first try out these settings. If it's not, it will just go back to the Expo profile that you've set. So take note on this. Sometimes it works, sometimes it will not work. But at all times, right, I would just prefer to run on the Expo profile, which is much stable. Next will be this, the X3D gaming mode, where I mentioned to you, right, for the latest BIOS to run the X3D, which is the 9800 or the upcoming 9950X X3D. You can enable this to enhance the experience on your gaming session and such. Graphic card detection. If you have an integrated graphic card and a discrete graphic card, and together with the processor with an integrated graphic card, right, you want to pinpoint which graphic card to use, you can select over here. Else you can just set to auto. Next will be the MSI driver utility installer. Keep this enabled when you first install your Windows 11 on the system itself. So when you boot up to the home screen, right, the MSI will prompt you to download all the relevant drivers for your system, which is your sound card, or should I say the onboard audio, the chipset drivers, the USB host drivers and such. So all in one, you can just download straight, instead of going to the website to download individual drivers and to install. Next will be the default home page, whereby you can select whether to see the system status, the advanced, overclock and such. Now at the bottom over here, where you see all this over here, these are the boot priority, whereby you can move. Let's say for example, since I do not have the M.2 installed or the SSD, right, I'll just take this as a reference, whereby you see the UEFI hard drive, right, take this for example as a first slot M.2 and your CD as your second M.2. The first M.2 is containing Windows OS and the second M.2 is containing the Linux OS. So it depends on what you want to boot. Let's say you want to boot to Linux, you can just hold on this, press on this, hold on it and drag to the front. So as you can see, this will boot to your Linux instead of your Windows. If you want to do it your Windows instead of Linux, you can just change. So this is what it meant by moving the boot priority, which is very useful. Now coming to this top section over here where you say M flash, right, instead of doing the BIOS flashback, which is making use of the rear IO button, you can download the BIOS without renaming the BIOS file, come to this page and to flash the latest BIOS in the system. You can choose this route too, but I will prefer to use the BIOS flashback, as that, right, it's more stable in a way. Next will be this hardware monitor, whereby it take you to this interface. You can tune your RPM of your fans, so you can either set manually, which is you toggle that at which degree Celsius of your CPU, right, you can set the percentage of how much you want to pump your RPM. Or you can make use of this, the graph itself. It's pretty straightforward. And of course, you can set it to PWM mode or DC mode. Now, at all times, it will be at PWM mode. And for DC, right, it's meant for those fans that is running on 3-pin instead of 4-pin, whereby you will have to regulate the fan curve, right, through voltage. Take a look at this when I click on DC. See, you tune by voltage to run the RPM. But modern fans, right, we just use PWM. Now next will be this MSI performance preset. If you click on this, right, you can set either PBO to auto or to PBO enabled. But personally, I will not use this because when I noticed that when I set to PBO enable, right, it does push your processor up, but it does provide even more B-core and such, and the temperature will go up. Now, next will be this, which is the profile. Assuming that you have you have set all the settings over here and you want to save the profile, you can just click on this and to click on save, or to press F9, and you press F9, right, you can select the profile that you want to save, as in like profile 1 or 6. So in the event, right, let's say you have some crashes on whatever settings you have done, right, and you wouldn't when you reset to clear CMOS, you can come back to here instead of using the default, right, manually key in all the settings, right, you can come to this page and to load, which is F8, to load your profile. Now next will be favorite. This I will skip. Coming to the BIOS log, whatever changes you have done, for example, earlier on I've set this, see, it will tell you what you have done, as in like what settings you have done. Next will be help. This is self-explained. I don't have to go through this. Languages you can set, whether Chinese, Korean, Japanese and such. Now for the search function, it's pretty straightforward. Assuming that you want to set just the RAM speed and you don't want to click here and there, you can just click on search, then just type RAM. See, you can set the RAM speed and such. Now for the snapshot, right, if you have a thumb drive connected to your motherboard, or even you can make use of the M.2 that's mounted on your system itself. MSI have actually done this when you do the snapshot. So when you click on it, right, you will take a screenshot of this interface here, and you will ask you where are you going to save the shot. And last but not least, the exit. Now coming to the advanced function, you either click the button over here or to press F7. If you press F7, right, this will take you to this interface. See, Now for some reason, right, if I use my mouse, right, you can see that there is animation at the left. So I would prefer to use the the keyboard up and down key. So for system, right, it's pretty straightforward. Oh. So as you can see, right, it will tell you the certain things like your SATA drive and such, and you can set your time and date over here. See, just to show you. Then of course, let's see. Next will be advanced, whereby you can set your the generation on your PCIe card, as in like your M.2 slot, your PCIe slot. So you can set all this generation. I'll just do a brief one, and not forgetting that you can do the resizable buy for your NVIDIA discrete graphic card. All is done over here. Next will be the integrated parrot. Okay, I'm going to skip some of this stuff because I'm not going to make this lengthy. Things that you need to know, I'll just show. Integrated parahertz. When you click on this, right, things that you do not make use of, you can turn them off. For example, let's say you wouldn't want to use the Wi-Fi, right? You can just turn this off, or you just want to use the Bluetooth. Since you're connecting your Ethernet, or should I say internet, using the Cat 6 cable on the LAN port, right, which is this, you can disable the Wi-Fi, or just to use the Bluetooth if you use the Bluetooth. If not, set it both to off. Now, reason for this, right? Why am I sharing this with you, right? Things that you do not need, when you shut it down or disable them, right, you will have a faster boot time, because they bypass the verification as in, is it in use or not in use. Same goes to your onboard audio. If let's say you choose to use your audio interface, right, like myself, right, I would just disable this, so that when it boot, right, as mentioned, right, the system will not need to verify whether there is a audio plug to it or such. So you just disable and you will boot faster. Now for the next thing will be, let's see, wake up on event setup. This is normally what I'll do by setting the PCIe device to enable. And why am I doing this is because that I have a program on my smartphone to trigger and to wake up the PC. Now other than that, okay, this I've actually explained before on the EZmode, whereby this is meant for you to install the drivers when you first time boot up as a fresh installed Windows, all the drivers like your chipset drivers and such. And as for secure erase, right, I often advise my viewers not to use this. I know that you can erase your M.2 data through here, but I have messed up about 4 to 6 M.2. End up I have to RMA those M.2s. Reason being, right, I should be using the application that comes with the M.2 and not this. So try to avoid using this. This is self-explained, which is the M.2 self-test. You can do this. Now the next section over here, right, now through advanced itself, there is a section whereby I say AMD overclocking. And just like the carbon board of MSI, I've told my viewers not to use this. Reason being, right, if I am to use the AMD overclocking over here and to use the precision boost overdrive, right, as you can see, there are no profile over here. Okay, I'll show you the profile later on another sub menu. And when you set the PVO limits over here, right, okay, take a look. These are all millivolts. Alright, milliampere, millivolts. So let's say I want to set to 200 watt, which is this processor itself, right, the default. I can't just set it this way. This will be, the voltage will be very, very little. I would need to add 3 more zeros to make it at 200 watt. Same goes to the TDC and EDC, whereby let's say I want to run at 152, right, I can't just put 152 M. I have to put 3 more zeros to indicate that it's 152 M, which is kind of troublesome. So I will not use this at all, in fact, which is under advanced AMD overclocking. Instead, I will be using this, the overclocking. Now for this menu here, right, to set your X3D chip, or should I say the 9800 X3D or the 9950 X3D, you can enable this over here. Now, as for the previous mention on the precision boost overdrive, right, I'll make use of this overclocking section, whereby you click on advanced CPU configuration, AMD overclocking, and precision boost overdrive. Take a look, you have all the profile over here. If you are lazy, right, you can make use of this, whereby you can set the thermal point will not exceed 65 degrees Celsius, 75 degrees Celsius, or 85 degrees Celsius. Or you can try out all this enhanced mode and such. And for myself, right, I'm more challenging, not the lazy type, so I'll just go advanced and to set the PBO. See? And one thing good about this, right, take a look, this is in wattage, ampere, not millivoltage and ampere. So I can just key in directly. Let's say I want to run 200 watt, I just type 200 without adding the zeros. Same goes to this and such, which is pretty straightforward. See, I don't have to add zeros to it. And next thing, which is the famous curve optimizer, which a lot of you will just enable all cores, and to set it to negative and set it to 30. Now you got to try and error on your curve optimizer, because based on the fact that not every chip, or should I say every processor, right, can run on minus 30. So if you can't run and it just hang, or it just crashes, right, you just need to decrease, or should I say increase the curve up. This is negative 20. Okay, negative 30 will be steeper, so you need to bring it up. And I would say that if let's say you are playing this, right, for all cores, and if you can sustain at 30, right, I wouldn't run at 30. I would just pump 10 to it. That's the night. I'll just make it 10. I'll just make it 20. So giving it buffer for the system, right, to have more power to supply to your processor. And by doing this, right, in fact, you are decreasing a lot about the temperature itself. Alright, not going to go into details on how I'm doing the PVO tool, but these are the functions. And for curve shaper, it's a new thing which all the 9000 series, right, or should I say the 7000 series and the 9000 series, right, will be able to use. It's a much more fine-tuned thing, which I will not explain. This probably you can check it out on the internet on how to do the curve shaper. Okay, these are the basic. And of course, other stuff like, okay, now other stuff like on the overclocking menu, right, you can set your export profile over here. See, you can enable to set your export profile. And from this, right, you can derive the clock speed if you want it higher. Because right now by default, right, my clock speed is actually 6000. You can set it 6002 or 6400, up to you. But I'll just leave it auto. Next will be the infinity fabrication. You can set this too. For example, this is actually 6000, right? I can run at 3000. Okay, to make it 6000. Alright, I'm not going to go into detail explaining all this stuff, but you can do this, do your own read up, and to search what this function can do. Alright, make sure you know everything and the concept before you fine tune your RAMs. Now, this is often this UCL, the U-clock Def 1 mode. This is often used by gamers, whereby they know that this profile here, right, profile 1 and profile 2, in fact, is game 1 and game 2. If you want faster boost speed on your games, right, set it to game 2, which is this. This is 1, this is 2. This means game mode 2. Okay. Now, other than that, for MSI have a very beautiful feature whereby you can set high efficient mode. When you enable this, right, it will give you this memory timing preset. You can set to what you want. Tightest is the fastest. So you'll fine tune more on your RAMs, which is good. Now the memory try 8, which I mentioned to you, right, this is a trial which I explained on the EZmode. It functions the same. Okay. Other than that, advanced configuration, you can set your own timing and such, up to you to play with, but make sure you know what you're doing. Then for this part over here, right, which I will often use, which is the CPU core voltage, which I will set to offset, and to set it negative value with a V-core offset value of 0.05. This is to tune down the voltage so that it will not make use of the redundant high V-core frequency to run your processor, and this will help to lower down the temperature. Okay, besides this, right, you can do your North Bridge SoC and such. This is all up to you. So these are the basic things that I'll do. Now, security wise, this is for you to set the administrator password on your UEFI. Meaning to say you don't want your siblings to enter to UEFI, you set a password. And if you have configuration set to this, right, and you do allow your siblings to enter the UEFI mode with their own configuration, you can set the user password for them. So when they do their profile, right, it will not cross to the profile that you have done, as in like your configuration. Besides this, okay, now there's one thing. Secure boot. You will need to have this if you're playing Valorant. Basically, what you need to do, right, is to set the secure boot mode to custom. Without having this set, right, you can't play Valorant. And bear in mind, if you're playing Valorant, right, you will be having custom, right? So when you want to format your M.2 and to do a fresh installation on Windows 11, make sure you come to this and set to standard. If not, you'll be having trouble booting your M.2. Next section, which is the last section, which is save and exit. These are all self-explainable, so I'm not going to go through with it. These are my opinion about this MSI X870 Tomahawk motherboard. It does give me the impression that this is of military grade. And why do I say so? Based on the fact that all their armor shielding, be it the VRM heatsink, the M.2 heatsink, and the chipset heatsink, these are solid aluminium. There are no plastic shielding to it. And the heat dissipation of this board is great when I tested it. Based on the fact that one bonus point, the VRM is using 80 amp choke. Unlike some other boards which is like 110, 120, those will run very hot because the VRM is storing at those amperage. Whereas for this, right, 80 ampere is more than enough to drive a high-end processor, which is 7950X or 9950X, or even the X3D variant, which is the 8000X3D, or the future 950X3D. It's more than sufficient. 80 amp choke, it can run. And best part of all, the way that they have designed the VRM heatsink, fantastic. First, they have lift up the height as compared to the previous generation, and having all these fins sorting out to dissipate more heat. This is on the side, and on the rear VRM, well, some of you might have witnessed that some of the motherboards have actually done this. There is a reason why, whereby the heat dissipation is through this block, and this thin whole plate, or should I say the thin layer surface area, right, will absorb all the heat off from the block and to dissipate heat out even faster. That's why I say the cooling solution is fantastic. Now next will be the locking mechanism. I like how they design the GPU locking mechanism. I find that some of the locking mechanism on other motherboards, right, are very clumsy, where you have to hold on it on one hand and the other hand holding on to a heavy graphic card and to release it. Imagine this is actually vertically mounted, as in like the motherboard, and you got to handle the heavy card. Sometimes accident might happen, and you might just break the PCI-E, the clip at the bottom of the GPU. Else, MSI have done a very brilliant job. When you press this once, it will stay released. Having both of your hands free to hold on to a heavy graphic card, right? And you can just pull it out with sturdy hands and such, so that you won't drop the card or you won't accidentally twist and having some accident or mishap. Well done. And for the locking mechanism on the M.2, I like it very much. It's easy to feather, especially the top and the bottom. See, it's just a one click motion. And these M.2s are not in one whole block. Where some of the motherboards, right, they like to design the whole M.2 shield as a whole block. Yes, that will dissipate heat well. But some, when you want to put it back, right, it's of some hassle. You got to align and such. So I like this mechanism a lot. Now, speaking of which, right, I hope that MSI will consider to do the center part in future, right, as toolless too, so that make it all standardized as toolless. You don't have to use screwdrivers. And on top of which, right, all the locking mechanism, as in like the M.2, I wish that they would standardize to be this, the latest locking mechanism. Else for this, right, you have, you got to make use of the old style. This is not a very big problem, but it's just that I find that they should replace all this, the old method to the new method. That would be great. Now, another thing I like to talk about, which is bonus point, the Dimm slot over here. As you can see, the locking mechanism is on both sides. I like this kind of locking mechanism as compared to those motherboard that only have, one side fixed and the other side unlocked. I hate to adjust RAMs and to plug. Reason being, right, if you want to unplug, right, you are leaving out one area, you can't leave out this area. And as time goes by, right, when you want to clean your motherboard, you want to change your RAMs and such, right, the wear and tear will be more prominent as compared to both side locking mechanism, because you're applying even pressure of your RAMs, right, to go in, and when you remove, right, you're applying equal pressure removing out with both ends rather than only one end. So this is one thing that I like about this board, which is this. And on top of which, you don't get to see mid-tier board with a digital debug code, which is you can see here. This will tell you further description of what is the actual error instead of just the general debug LED. So this is one good point. Now, something which I dislike about this board is only one thing. The M.2 second slot is being shared lane with the rear USB 4 Type C port. If you were to use this port together with the second slot, it's going to be X2 instead of X4. So it's not a very big deal. It's just that I wish that, they could set it at same, it's like the equal lane and such. Or maybe to gamers, it's not a big deal. You can just make use of 3 M.2s, disable the M.2 slot 2, and to enable this to run at full X4. So this is one of the solutions that you can do. Besides this, right, some of you might want ARGB effect. I would say that, yeah, a touch of ARGB, it wouldn't hurt. And also to the fact that not many people will appreciate the logo that is in green. Okay, some might like it, some might not like it. But for me, right, when I look at this green, or should I say lime color kind of logo and pattern, right, it just struck me to a very unique case which I've shown you, which is the Geometrix Model 5. That will be very suitable for this motherboard. Who is this motherboard for and why should they purchase this? Basically, this board is meant for gamers that does light video editing and live streaming. And based on what I've witnessed of the performance of this board, right, the cooling solution is fantastic. And for light content creation, right, there are more than enough bells and whistles, as in like the memory capacity and the M.2 storage. And best part, you have this two Type-C USB 4 port, whereby you can transfer up to 40 gig. So imagine that you have compiled some live streams and such, right, you can just transfer them into external enclosure that has this kind of speed. And in addition, if you're doing live streaming, right, you can make use of the integrated GPU to project out using a Type-C monitor. So this comes in handy. Now, as for this MSI X870 Tomahawk, I'd like to thank a very special friend, or should I say a very close friend, Alvin, to have purchased this board off from Cobell. The story goes like this. Alvin had been watching the reviews about this motherboard and was telling me that he's interested in it. And it happens that MSI have provided this board for me to do review. So I did tell Alvin that I'm going to review this board, and he was telling me that, hey, Cleo, once after review, right, can I purchase off the board from you? Well, since this is actually a loan board, I'm not able to sell it to him directly. So instead, I got in touch with Cobell, asking them, hey, can I purchase this board and to do the review? At the meantime, right, as a gratitude to thank MSI, so this is actually what happened. With this said, I'd like to thank MSI to have provided this board for me to share with you guys, and to Alvin to have purchased this board, and also to Cobell to have done the arrangement on the delivery. And if you guys are new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.